Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Marketing by Design. This is going to be a little bit of a feed interrupt episode. I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, Anthony Holliday, recently. And this was originally not recorded, but in this video, in this recording, Anthony gives such an insightful insight. And I ripped on him afterwards and I said, man, would you mind if I extracted this piece on Reddit that we talked about that got these insane results, everything that I learned from you? And this was such a sit and lean forward conversation for me in terms of how he's starting to use Reddit. We're starting to use it with the AMA, dabbling with it for our own business and our own clients. But if you've ever been interested in trying Reddit or just had viewed it like a black box like I had previously, held that misconception for a long time, I think especially in the way of search, a lot of things are changing, and I had, like I said, a lean forward moment when he said this, so I wanted to share that with you guys. So be sure to check out Anthony. Everything will be linked below about him, his business, Sitka Design. Huge thank you for him being open to sharing something like this, because it's a very real case study on how to drive results with these things. This is the Anthony Holliday episode. Here we go. So I want to talk to you about some of the technical stuff, because I've seen in some of your posts, you do a lot of like community sort of, I view it as like finger on the pulse of what's going on, like community wise. Like you post a lot of polls and stuff like that too. And I try to vote in when I can, but I'm always kind of like looking to see the responses too. I'm like, oh, I kind of had the same question. But you mentioned something about Reddit that kind of piqued my curiosity. What has been your tinkering sort of in that realm too? What have you done? Because that's I honestly I wanted to have someone on the podcast who was like, because that's kind of my avenue. Is like I know that, like, especially with AI and all these tools stuff, like there's a lot that I don't know, and I view like the conversation just sort of my piquing of the interest and how I can get started and learning about it too. But what kind of dabbling have you done with that in terms of your job, your like what we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like, well, first of all, thanks for voting and stuff. Like, I guess my whole LinkedIn strategy it really just comes down to one simple thing, which is in the past, and we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, but in the past, when it's come to social media, even if it's like to my benefit or my gain, I've always like second guessed posting something. So my rule for this year was I'm going to post every single weekday. And if I just think of something that I think is interesting, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to post it and see what happens. And so that's kind of how a lot of these posts have come to be. And it's reflected that way. Like some posts do really, really well. And then some get like, a handful of likes. And it's just the reality of it. But I think it's a good way to actually figure out kind of like what you were saying, the pulse of what people are talking about or what people care about. So yeah, this like Reddit one in particular, it's actually something super interesting that I kind of came across just by accident, really. So in my music production days, I was making like definitely most of my money was through royalties of songs and things like that. However, I also started a YouTube channel teaching people music production. And so I would go on Reddit. I would basically find questions that people had that were like really, really specific. And chances are when I was looking for those questions, it was actually just a question that I had. Like I'd spent enough time in the software or working on something in particular where I was like, oh, why do we do it this way? Why couldn't we do it this way? And so I would go onto Reddit, and sure enough, there would be maybe 2 or 3 or 4 posts over the last few years that have been asked. And maybe they had, 10 or 20 responses to, which is like a pretty good Reddit post. And so basically then I would start making videos answering those questions, and then I'd post it in these music production forums, and suddenly it would get like, 50,000 views, 100,000 views, things like that. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then there was like another stat I read. I think I posted this on LinkedIn where it was saying like 98% of Redditors don't post, don't comment, don't post, don't anything. They just view posts. So I was like, okay, that's another interesting stat. And kind of proved true.
98%.
Yeah, I have a stat here somewhere, but it's like, I think it's 98% of Reddit users don't post or comment. They just upvote or like view, something like that. It was a crazy stat. And it's like, that's so interesting. Because then it's like, okay, well, if I post something and it gets like 5 or 10 upvotes, chances are I'll probably get like at least 100 views or 200 views from it. And so like that compounds basically. I'll try to see what the marketing.
What was your okay pause? So sorry,
Yeah.
not to cut you. If I cut you
No,
off
go ahead.
because I'm interested.
Yeah.
So what is like your threshold for taking action on something that you see? So is it amount of upvotes on something else, or is it just a lot of engagement on a topic, or is it just like your own interest and think, oh, I want to make content on that?
At the time, it was definitely no scientific process behind it. I was just like, I have this question. I wonder if other people have this question. And then I would
Yeah.
look it up. And then sometimes I would look it up and I would find the answer that I was looking for. But then sometimes I'd look it up and it would just be people asking the same question with no answer. So you'll see this a lot on Reddit. You'll see it on Quora. You'll see it on like specific forums as well. So like a programming forum for JavaScript, you might find like a very specific JavaScript question that is really only specific to that. It also is great for any types of software like Webflow forums or things like that. Because you find the very, very passionate people about it, but they just can't figure something out. So anyways, yeah, basically that's what happened with the music production side. And then when I started like marketing websites and stuff, I kind of was like, okay, is there a way that I could hack this into like everyday business based stuff? And I was like, well, there must be, because there's all these communities online of like, for example, like you love golf. Like I'm sure there is the most passionate of passionate golf forums and websites you could go to that about that I would have never heard of. But and then I'm sure there's people in there talking on the forums about like very specific things. And so the really interesting one that I found was one of my first clients was a realtor, and he was like a high-end luxury realtor in my hometown in British Columbia, Canada. And so the homes he was selling were like minimum $1.52 million, and then all the way up to like $30-40 million. And so like commission for him is like really important. Even if he gets like an extra couple leads on a house that's worth $10 million, like that could potentially be worth hundreds of thousands of him in commission. So I was thinking like, okay, well, like extremely wealthy people still want to browse online and find things. And so rather than just targeting the city that I'm from, it's like a small ski kind of resort town. I was like, what if we started to answer questions about specific areas? Is going to have areas that are high crime rate as well. Like not the whole town is amazing. But then there are pockets of the town that people would look into because they've heard about it in conversation or it comes up on a blog or something. And so basically what we did was we started to create blog posts. I can't show you those, unfortunately, just because of client privacy and stuff, but I can explain it. So basically we would like make blog posts that were specific to these high net worth areas. Things like, best restaurants to eat in wherever, or top activities to do in wherever. And then you take those same questions and you implement it into schema markup, like for Google search, also post it on Reddit, post it in Quora, or if people are asking those questions. And then we actually started to see a huge uptick in people contacting him about these properties that were, worth 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. And
do you link to the original article on his site in the content or the posts on Reddit and Quora and stuff?
Yeah, so we wouldn't link directly to the post because then usually you're going to start getting the like, oh, this is spam kind of thing.
Yeah.
We would ensure that every account that we were responding to these questions with was his basically like name realtor kind of thing. And so what would happen is these people would say, oh, we found you on Reddit. Like we saw you answered this question. We clicked your profile. We saw that you're a realtor in this area. And so we just reached out, and like, that's how the lead would come in. So it was like a bit of trickery in the sense like, okay, we're not quite directly posting and being like, hey, everybody, I do this. However, you're definitely coming across as an expert and your username is related to that profession, basically.
Yeah. Oh, that's that's actually really interesting. And that's so like my experience with Reddit is that every time, first of all, my perception from the outside is that its searchability and its rankability is it's so well in Google, but not a lot of people. And I think the friction is that it'll match for a question on search, even on like AI, ChatGPT. Like I'm seeing it come up a lot more too. In response to actual questions, like if I use the search function on ChatGPT, It'll be one of the blue links that'll come up. But I think the friction is that that's why I see that stat, like 98% of people don't have accounts, is that they'll have a very specific query mass question, and they'll go and look for the answer. But then to respond or engage or anything, it's like you have to create a profile, and people just don't do that. And that's been the depth of my experience too. And it's like every time I log into there, I just get a little bit overwhelmed by like the UI, and I don't know how to navigate it, and I don't have a profile set up. And it's just like, okay, scroll down through, see if I can find the answer, and then bounce. So that's really interesting. So a lot of it is the clicking. So a lot of it is inbound. What was that time investment like for like finding the forums where you would then add the topic? Was it just like searching the topic that related to the article and then just chiming in there?
Like basically, what was this time invested to find like exactly where we're going to post these answers?
Yeah. Or would you, because I don't think there's any sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any sort of penalty for like posting more. Like I feel like you can kind of post a certain topic on a lot of different forums or a lot of different threads, and you don't get like penalized or anything like that. Is that true?
Yeah, like because a lot of these forums just have like one or two moderators on them, right? So
yeah,
unfortunately, like there is rules, but they're different for each forum. And then like obviously each moderator has like their own emotions and what they think is spam and whatnot. So I wouldn't say that there's like a black and white way for you to I guess know if you're going to get banned or if you're not.
It's like everything marketing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like some people are like, this is offensive. And then some people are like, this is genius, you know? So
yeah.
I think like maybe the advantage that I had, because like the original time I was doing this was the music production stuff. So I was actually just a user in the forums for a long time. I was one of those lurker people. And one thing to be clear about as well, when I say like 98% of users don't comment or whatever, they have accounts, but they just don't comment or they don't post. So like, but they're still logged in. They're still going to these same forums. I wish I could find the stat for you right now. I'll find it for you and send it to you. But like they're active users, but they like don't engage, I guess. Like they basically use it like a search engine. But yeah, so I think like in terms of towing the line and how to not get banned, I guess like the kind of thought process I've taken on with it is like, am I contributing to this forum? Because I think that's probably what the moderators are going to be asking themselves when they look at the post. And like, if the title comes off as helpful, and then at the bottom there's a link for something where you have to purchase, then it's kind of like, okay, this is an ad basically. So I think a lot of it is like it is a little bit of manual work, but again, we found it to be really helpful for our clients. Is like, you're going to go through, you're going to find these questions that people have. And like so many questions go unanswered on Reddit. People will ask, there'll be no responses, and you'll see the timeline is, 6 months ago or something. And then you just go and respond like, hey, I noticed you asked this. Here's my experience, basically. I think that the real estate example is really good because like so many people are obsessed and like care about where they live, and then they should be like where they live, the type of house they have, the price, the school district, things like that. And so again, for the real estate industry, like that's so valuable because you can basically go onto Reddit and be like, okay, you said that you went to university in a suburb of Cleveland. I'm sure that there's questions in the Cleveland subreddit like, what is the best area to come? I'm from California, but I just recently got a job in Cleveland. Where should I rent? Like, those are the kind of questions that you're trying to find where you're like, hey, I'm a realtor here. I've lived here my whole life. These are my recommendations, because that kind of feels like a conversation that you'd have like at a bar versus on a forum kind of thing.